Author's note. Let me start off by stressing that this is a fanfic story, and I do not own any rights to any part of the Transformers universe. I am not trying to make money with this story. However, if Hasbro or whoever owns the rights to Transformers wants to talk, I'm open. I have been a fan of the Transformers since the first episode back in 1984. When the 1986 movie came out on video, I rented it and watched it not less than 5 times that night. While I didn't exactly cry when Prime died, I was very moved. I continued watching the cartoon until the series ended in 1987. I was never a fan of the comic books, however. No real reason, I just never got into them. When Beast Wars came out, I watched about a half of an episode and decided it was stupid and lost interest. After that, several other incarnations of Transformers came and went, all without me even knowing about them. Anyway, I'm drifting. What I'm trying to say is that this story isn't going to follow the live-action movie timeline, or much at all after the original series. When I found out that each of the many incarnations of the Transformers was a separate universe in and of itself, I decided I could basically do the same thing with my fanfic. The Autobots who survived the 1986 movie will be featured, and unless they were specifically shown to have been killed off in the movie, they will be around. Which means Jazz is still alive. And a Porsche. I mean, come on, a Pontiac? Seriously. However, both Ironhide and Ratchet are dead, as are Optimus Prime, Wheeljack, Brawn, and Prowl. Galvatron, Cyclonus, the Sweeps, and the Quintessens will also be featured, and the Sweeps will be an innumerable army of generic Decepticons. I'm not going to dismiss the Bayformers movies altogether, however. I will include the Allspark and certain things surrounding that. I rather like that idea, as well as the Transformers' ability to change their alt mode pretty much at will. All they need is something roughly their same size to scan. One problem I had with Rise of the Beasts was that Mirage was able to use a garbage truck as an alt mode. That was a reach. Thank you to the YouTuber Chris McFeely. I know a great deal more about all aspects of the Transformers as a franchise. And by great deal, what I mean to say is that what I knew before was like a high school grad compared to what I've learned now. I'd have my master's. Thank you, Mr. McFeely. I'd support you on Patreon if I could. This is a hint to all those reading this. If you're not supporting him on Patreon, you should. Also, the first time I read anything about Red Alert, the Autobot was listed as female. I can't find it again, but it bugged me when it seemed they switched it for the cartoon, so I'm switching it back. I mean, come on. Who wouldn't want to date a red-headed nurse? Oops. Spoilers.
Transformers. Outpost Earth. Chapter 1. The year is 2017, 12 years after the last great Cybertronian war, the death of Optimus Prime, and the planet known as Unicron. Though Galvatron is leading them, the Decepticons are on the run, and Rodimus Prime is eager to eradicate them altogether. The Earth is now basically an outpost for the Autobots, staffed by a skeleton crew. The last big Decepticon attack was 6 months ago, and it was coordinated so poorly that the Decepticons lost half their number. One Decepticon, Ramjet, was taken out when a human truck driver, Seth, crushed him under his 18-wheeler. That attack left the remaining Decepticons decimated and demoralized, and it gave the Autobots several new recruits. And without further ado, Transformers, Outpost Earth. A woman in her mid-30s with a thin nose ring and chestnut-brown hair with dark ginger highlights stepped out of a pharmacy in Midtown, a small prescription bag in her hand. She was finally getting her life back on track after the divorce, had her own place, her own routine, her own independence. Simple things like picking up her migraine medication without having to coordinate with anyone else's schedule felt like small victories. She walked down the road a little ways, checking her phone for messages from the kids, when she stopped and let out an annoyed sigh. There, parked illegally in a loading zone, was an emerald green Kenworth with gold flames on the hood. On the side of the sleeper was an octagon that looked like it was made out of golden rope, surrounding a black background. In the middle of the octagon was a Kelly green shamrock and 6 stars, 3 above and 3 below. That damn logo he'd insisted on getting, back when he thought their family was going to last forever.
1 star for each of us,
He'd said, like they were some kind of unit patch. Nora scowled and crossed the road with determined steps. She kicked the front tire, immediately regretting it when pain shot through her foot.
I thought I told you I didn't want to see you anymore.
She said loudly, not caring if anyone thought she was crazy for yelling at a truck. Let them think what they wanted. The green driver's door opened, and she climbed in, slamming it behind her harder than necessary.
What do you want, Seth?
She demanded, not bothering to sit down properly.
I have things to do.
I'm not following you, Nora.
Came the familiar voice through the speakers. Still Seth's voice, but processed through whatever computer system he was now.
And it's loadout.
I don't care what they call you.
She said flatly.
You're still the same guy who couldn't keep his priorities straight. What do you want?
We got a tip about possible Decepticon activity in this area. I'm here doing my job.
Your job.
She laughed bitterly.
Right. The job that's more important than showing up to Cadence's school plays or Ollie's parent-teacher conferences.
Nora, you know it's not like that.
Do I? Because from where I'm sitting, nothing's changed. You're still putting everything else ahead of your family. The only difference is now you've got a really good excuse.
There was a pause. When he spoke again, his voice was carefully controlled.
The kids are my priority. Everything I do, everything I have done since you told me you were pregnant the first time is to keep them safe.
Yeah, good job.
Nora said with bitter sarcasm.
Real stellar parenting there.
They're still our children, Nora.
Are they?
The question burst out of her before she could stop it.
Are they really? Or are they just machines with my baby's memories?
The silence stretched between them, heavy with pain. Finally, Loadout spoke, and there was something raw in his synthesized voice.
Is that what you really think?
I don't know what to think anymore.
Tears pricked at her eyes.
Oliver still calls me Mommy and wants me to read him bedtime stories, but he's also apparently made of metal now. Rory draws pictures of flowers and butterflies, but she can turn into a fancy car. Katie still gets nervous before tests, which she's always acing now. And Patrick.
Her voice broke, but she continued on.
Pat is trying to figure out how to kiss his girlfriend when he doesn't even know if he's still human.
They're struggling too, Nora. This isn't easy for any of us.
But you made the choice for all of them.
The anger flared again, hot and bright.
You dragged them into some fantasy war that was never theirs to fight.
I didn't drag them anywhere. I made the only choice that kept them alive.
His voice rose, the speakers crackling slightly.
I know this is hard.
Hard?
She laughed bitterly.
Hard is when your husband deploys for the 5th time and you're pregnant with 3 kids already. Hard is when he comes back with PTSD and won't talk about what happened overseas. This isn't hard, Seth. This is impossible.
And instead of learning what PTSD is and how best to deal with it, you blame me for everything.
Loadout said.
I'll bet you still think it's some made-up quasi-excuse offered to combat vets just to make them feel better.
You never even tried to talk to me.
What do you want to hear?
Loadout shouted back.
That I witnessed the absolute worst of humanity? That I went on raids where full-grown adult men sent little children, some with knives, some with guns, and some with explosives strapped to themselves into battle while they stayed back and hid behind innocent civilians. That I still, to this day, don't like going to sleep because sometimes I wake up screaming because the faces of those children are all calling out to me that I couldn't save them. That they all died to fulfill some narcissistic maniac's vision of how the world should bend to his needs. I didn't tell you any of that, because no matter what you think, it's still my job to protect the lives of the innocent. You still sleep soundly because I didn't say anything.
Nora sat in silence for a moment, but not because she was moved by his words. She was thinking about how this was just another excuse, Another way for Seth to make himself the victim instead of taking responsibility.
So what?
She finally said, her voice cold.
Lots of people go through trauma and don't abandon their families. You chose to shut me out instead of getting help. You chose to drink instead of talking to me. That's on you, not on some diagnosis.
You didn't hear a word I just said, did you?
Loadout asked.
Just like the marriage counselor said.
That marriage counselor was for your benefit.
Nora said.
We're not doing this, Seth. We tried for 2 years to make it work before the kids got hurt, and it didn't. I even went to that stupid marriage counselor. You never got better. This situation doesn't change anything between us.
Loadout was silent for a moment.
I'm not asking for...
Good. Because I'm finally getting my life together. I've got my own place. I'm thinking about going back to school, maybe even dating again. I don't need this complication.
The cab fell silent except for the distant sounds of city traffic. Finally, Loadout spoke.
Are you going to listen?
Nora sighed, hard.
Fine. What is it?
She said.
All I want is to co-parent effectively.
Loadout said.
Keep the kids safe. Give them the best possibility for a bright future. That's it. I'm not following you. I didn't know you were here.
Fine. Then we understand each other.
She reached for the door handle again.
Next time you need to tell me something about the kids, call first. Don't just show up.
Show up where?
Loadout's voice grew intense.
I told you why I'm here. I had no idea you were here.
Loadout, what's going on? Are you paying attention?
Another voice cut in over the radio.
I'm sorry, Jazz.
Loadout said, and Nora could hear him switching into his professional mode.
I have an unexpected guest.
Unexpected guest?
Jazz's voice carried concern.
Who's that? Nora?
Hi, Jazz.
Nora said, her tone becoming more neutral. At least Jazz treated her with basic respect.
Where are my children?
Last I knew, the Sparklings were in school.
Jazz replied. Nora cringed at the word sparklings. Even Autobot terminology made them sound like something other than human children.
We don't have the time, or I'd have Loadout drive you there.
Jazz continued.
But rest assured, I am honoring our agreement. They are not with us. The only one I don't know the location of is Gear Jammer. Once I find him, we're going to have a long talk. But he's not here either.
Nora's stomach clenched with familiar worry.
What do you mean you don't know where Patrick is?
He's 18, Nora.
Loadout said.
And he's been reliable. He's probably just...
He's 18 and he can turn into a car and apparently fight in some kind of robot war.
Her voice rose again.
That's not the same as a normal teenager staying out past curfew.
18-year-olds fighting in a war is nothing new.
Loadout said.
I was 18 when I enlisted in the Marines.
But this is different.
Nora said.
You chose that. Pat had it forced on him. Jazz?
Make it fast, we're on a mission.
Jazz said.
Please try to go easy on Pat, Gear Jammer, as you guys call him. He's been through a lot.
I won't throw him in the brig.
Jazz said.
We gotta go.
Happy?
Loadout asked, clearly trying to deflect the conversation before it spiraled again.
Ecstatic.
Nora deadpanned, reaching for the door handle.
Are we done here?
You're the one who approached me.
Loadout said, his patience wearing thin. She opened the door and stepped out onto the first step.
Be careful out there. The kids need their father even if I don't need their father's drama.
Wait.
Loadout said as she started to get out.
Where did you park?
Nora paused, one foot still inside the cab.
Why?
Damn it, Nora, just answer the question.
She gestured vaguely down the street.
2 blocks that way. Street parking.
Stay put for a minute.
He said, and she could hear that edge in his voice, the same tone he'd used in the Marines when something felt wrong.
Seth, I'm not...
Jazz! Blaster here! Another voice crackled over the radio, cutting her off. I'm picking up transmissions from an unused radio wavelength. There's something weird going on, and it's happening right here.
Jazz, this is Hound.
Another voice joined in.
I'm tracking 3 energy signatures moving underground through the storm drains. Whatever's going on, there's more to it than just government officials.
Nora felt a chill run down her spine and found herself climbing back into the cab and closing the door.
What does that mean?
I've got a bad feeling about this.
Loadout said.
Don't say that.
Nora said, unnerved.
Can you isolate what they are saying?
Jazz asked. I've been following their transmissions for a couple of minutes, Blaster said. It sounds like U.S. government officials have a strike team nearby. They are looking for someone whom they believe has a bomb strapped to themselves.
What, here?
A female voice said.
There's hundreds of humans here.
Mirage reporting.
Came another voice, calm and controlled.
I have eyes on human tactical teams moving in, but there's something else. Scanning now.
Something's not right.
Loadout said, his sensors automatically scanning the area around them.
Perceptor, can you get a close-up of the guy with the bomb?
We're not here for that, but everyone keep your optics on full.
Jazz said.
Decepticons are around. That's who we're here for. But keep that transmission in the background so we don't get in each other's way.
Nora gripped the door handle tighter.
Seth, I need to get to the kids.
They're at school, Nora. Miles from here. They're fine.
Jazz Perceptor here.
What did you got, Perceptor?
Jazz said.
Loadout was right to have me scan the area. It would appear the man the U.S. military is seeking is in the same location we received in our tip.
I've got a really bad feeling about this.
Loadout said.
Is there any Decepticon activity?
Jazz asked.
None that I can find.
Perceptor said.
But Hound's underground readings are concerning.
Good.
Jazz said.
The last thing we need is...
Jazz couldn't finish his thought as a massive explosion rocked the city block and the world seemed to explode. A fireball ripped through several buildings. A roiling orange and black mushroom that climbed into the sky like something from hell itself. The sound came a split second later, not just heard but felt, a bone-deep rumble that rattled windows and set off car alarms for blocks around. Cars were sent flying, windows were blown out for blocks around. Concrete was cratered and blown apart. Trees were toppled. A high-rise building swayed back and forth dangerously. At least 100 people were within 50 feet of the man when he triggered the bomb. There was no way they lived, and hundreds more were injured from the sheer concussion of the blast, not to mention all the flying debris. The blast wave hit Loadout like a physical blow, his massive frame rocking heavily on his suspension as the shockwave rolled through him. Inside his cab, Nora was thrown across the interior, her shoulder slamming hard against the passenger door.
You all right?
Loadout asked Nora. He'd been covered in dust and debris.
Oh my goodness.
She said, stunned. She looked around out the window and repeated herself. She pushed her torso up, trying to right herself, but her shoulder throbbed from where it had connected with the door frame. She clutched her arm and clenched her teeth in pain. Through the windshield, she could see the fireball climbing higher, debris raining down like deadly confetti. The initial blast was just the beginning. The shockwave ripped through the urban landscape like an invisible wrecking ball. Windows exploded outward in glittering cascades, their fragments catching the light of the fire. Cars flipped end over end, their alarms joining in a cacophony of electronic screaming. Street lamps bent and toppled, power lines snapped and writhed like angry snakes, shooting sparks into the smoke-filled air. A transit bus, caught in the blast radius, lifted completely off the ground and tumbled through the air before crashing down on its side in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. Loadout could see people inside, trapped, bleeding, crying for help. Trees that had stood for decades were uprooted in seconds, their massive trunks becoming battering rams that smashed through storefronts and crushed parked cars. The very pavement cracked and cratered, creating a moonscape of broken concrete and exposed pipes that hissed steam and leaked unknown fluids. But it was the high-rise office building that made Loadout's energon run cold. 20 stories of glass and steel. It had been swaying ominously since the blast. Now, as he watched through his sensors, he could see the structural damage spreading through its frame like a cancer. Support beams twisting, threatening to snap. Load-bearing walls crumbling. The building's internal skeleton was coming apart.
Everyone check in.
Jazz said.
Load out here. I was near the blast, but I'm operational. Nora is still here. She's a bit banged up, but she's fine.
Blaster here. I'm functional.
Trax here. Nothing that a nice car wash couldn't fix.
Came a slightly vain voice.
Hound reporting. I'm doing better than that building over there. Also, those underground signatures just went active. Multiple contacts moving fast through the drainage system.
This is Mirage. All systems green?
Jazz, this is Smokescreen. That explosion was far too big for any human ordnance. Whoever our bomber was had to have Decepticon help. I'm laying down defensive smoke for the incoming first responders.
Wheelie say I'm okay.
Perceptor checking in.
Red Alert checking in.
Said the female voice.
Jazz, we've got to do something to help the survivors. I'm reading massive casualties from here.
The intel was good.
Jazz said.
What happened?
We can figure that out later.
Loadout said.
There's a bus here with people trapped inside. Red Alert is right, Jazz. If we don't step in now, that high-rise is going to fall, and more people will be hurt.
All right.
Jazz said.
Perceptor, Red Alert, Wheelie, start helping the people. Blaster, contact every fire station, hospital, and ambulance company in a 20-mile radius. Get all of them here, now. Loadout, you and I are going to shore up that building so it doesn't come crashing down on anyone. Hound, keep tracking those underground contacts. Mirage, coordinate with the human responders. Smokescreen and Trax, establish a perimeter and watch for hostiles.
As Jazz spoke, Nora could only stare through Loadout's cab windows. She looked at the devastation in horror. Bodies lay scattered in the street, some moving, some terrifyingly still. A woman stumbled past them, her clothes torn and bloody, calling out a name over and over. A man sat in the middle of the road, cradling his arm at an impossible angle, his face blank with shock.
There are so many people.
Nora whispered, her voice breaking.
Seth, there are so many people hurt. How do you deal with this?
Yeah.
Loadout said quietly.
Welcome to my world. This is what I was protecting you from. I have to go, Nora. Are you all right to drive yourself?
Right. Yeah, I'll talk to you later.
Nora said, climbing out of the truck still in a daze. When she was out, Loadout transformed into his robot form, and without even a glance in Nora's direction, ran towards the settling dust and smoke. The first time she'd seen a vehicle turn into a bipedal robot was 6 months ago, but no matter how many times she saw it, it still took her breath away. The truck seemed to unfold from the inside out, metal plates shifting and sliding with mechanical precision, wheels repositioning, the cab becoming a torso, arms extending from what had been the sides of the sleeper. In seconds, where her ex-husband's truck had been, a 30-foot-tall robot was running towards danger.
Wait, what about the people on the bus?
Nora shouted at Loadout. She'd suddenly snapped out of her shock and realized there weren't enough Autobots to help all the wounded. But Loadout was already too far away, his massive strides carrying him toward the damaged building. Sirens began wailing across the city as first responders raced toward the disaster zone. Nora looked all around. Smoke and debris covered everything in a fine layer of dust that made the world look like an old sepia photograph. A man's head poked up through the smashed-out window of the overturned bus. He was trying to find a way out, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. There didn't appear to be any Decepticons in sight. Maybe the only thing that was going to happen was the bomb. Nora ran over to the bus and looked up at the man who was trying to climb out.
Wait a second. You won't be able to climb down safely.
She called up to the man before looking around for something to help.
Let me try something.
Nora picked up a large piece of concrete that had landed nearby and ran over to the large windshield. But before she acted, she could see that the bus driver was still strapped into his seat, unconscious and bleeding. Another passenger stumbled toward the front, blood trickling from a head wound, but seemed too dazed to help.
Hey,
Nora called to him.
can you help me get people out?
The man just stared at her with unfocused eyes, clearly suffering from a concussion.
Back up!
Nora called into the bus.
Can everyone back up from the front window?
A few passengers who were still conscious shuffled backward, but most were either unconscious or too injured to move. Nora gritted her teeth and stepped closer to the windshield. Instead of throwing the concrete, she gripped it with both hands and swung it like a sledgehammer. The impact sent shockwaves up her arms, but the safety glass spider-webbed into thousands of cracks.
Almost got it.
She muttered, swinging again. This time a large section of glass collapsed inward with a crash, and she had to jump back to avoid the falling shards.
Come on.
She called through the opening.
Everyone who can move, this way.
A teenage girl near the front started climbing toward the opening, but stopped when she saw an elderly woman trapped under a fallen seat.
We can't leave her,
The girl said.
We're not leaving anyone.
Nora replied, though she had no idea how they'd get everyone out.
But we need to get the walking wounded clear first. Then we can focus on the people who need more help.
The sound of approaching sirens grew louder. Help was coming, but not fast enough. Nora helped the teenage girl climb through the opening, then turned to help a businessman who was holding his wrist at an odd angle. As she worked, she could hear more people stirring inside the bus, some calling for help, others just moaning in pain.
Is anyone else able to move?
She called into the bus.
My leg's stuck,
Came a voice from the back.
There's a kid back here who's not waking up,
Called another. Nora's heart sank. This was bigger than she could handle alone, but she couldn't just stand there and wait. Meanwhile, Loadout was still running towards the building when a white Porsche zipped past him. The Porsche launched itself into the air, transforming mid-flight. Jazz landed on his feet and ran to a large hole in the wall of the damaged building.
Perceptor, give me a reading on this building.
Jazz shouted as he ran.
Structural integrity at 15% and falling.
Perceptor's voice crackled over their comm system.
We have perhaps 90 seconds before complete collapse.
Jazz reached the building first, his smaller frame allowing him to move faster through the debris field. He pressed his hands against the damaged wall, his internal systems analyzing the building's condition.
It's worse than it looks. The main support columns are compromised. Loadout, I need you on the north corner. That's where the weight distribution is failing.
But before either of them could act, before they could even reach their positions, the building's internal structure gave a final, shuddering groan. The remaining support beams, twisted and weakened beyond their limits, snapped like twigs. 40,000 tons of concrete and steel began its inexorable fall toward the street below.
Clear out! Get out of the way!
Jazz shouted to anyone who could hear him. His voice was magnified by his own audio systems, and it carried over the rumble of collapsing masonry. He spotted two figures near the building's base, an elderly man helping a woman with a broken leg. Jazz quickly transformed back into his Porsche mode, his doors flying open and his convertible top folding back.
Get in!
He shouted. The man helped the woman into the passenger's seat before running around the car and hopping in the driver's seat. Jazz's engine roared as he shot forward, racing the building's shadow as it stretched across the street.
Jazz!
Nora yelled from her position near the bus, her voice barely audible over the thunder of the collapse. Jazz heard her and spun his wheels, turning toward the bus for just a moment. But he was carrying injured civilians, and the building was coming down fast.
Status report,
Jazz said to Nora, pulling to a stop next to the bus.
There are passengers trapped inside this bus.
Nora said.
Hound. Red alert. Lock on to this location and get down here. There are humans trapped inside an overturned bus.
Jazz said. Then to Nora, he said,
I'm sorry, but that's the best I can do right now.
That will be enough. Thank you.
Nora said, as Jazz sped off to a safe distance from the collapsing building.
Hang on, everyone. There's help on the way.
Nora said, trying to reassure the passengers. Before she was even finished speaking, a white Lamborghini with red crosses on its doors and roof and a caduceus on its hood sped towards her. The sports car hit its brakes and fishtailed sideways before transforming into a tall, slender Autobot with what could be called feminine features, and knelt down in front of Nora.
Oh, hi.
Nora said, and then looked around.
Where's Hound?
He'll be here.
Red Alert said quickly.
What needs to happen?
Well, there are several people trapped inside this bus, and a couple who are unconscious.
If I lift the bus, will you be able to get them out?
Red Alert asked.
Yes, I think so.
Nora said. Red Alert leaned over the bus and looked through the smashed-out windows at all the people inside.
I'm going to try to lift the bus,
she said, before grabbing onto the frame and digging the fingers of her other hand under the bus. She braced herself and lifted. The front of the bus lifted about a foot off the ground.
She's free,
came a call from inside the bus.
Go help them.
Red Alert struggled out. Nora looked up at her. Uncertainty played across her face for a brief moment, but then she stepped through the busted-out windshield and moved to where the formerly trapped people were slowly making their way out.
If you can walk, help someone who can't.
Nora said to everyone.
There are vehicles outside to take you someplace safe.
People started making their way out of the bus. One man picked up an unconscious teenager and was carefully making his way out. At one point, the bus shimmied a little, but then raised up another 6 inches. Nora looked up and saw that Hound had arrived and replaced Red Alert as the one holding the bus. Red Alert transformed back into her Lamborghini, and then her top slid back like a convertible. Except, instead of disappearing, it transformed into a platform that could seat 4 more people with handles for them to hold on to.
Put the unconscious person in the passenger's seat,
Red Alert said, and her passenger's door opened. The man carrying the unconscious teen looked at the car with a mix of bewilderment and uncertainty, but gently lowered them into the seat. Then, for good measure, he buckled the seatbelt. Nora helped the woman with a broken ankle out of the bus and put her in Red Alert's driver's seat before turning around and looking up at Hound.
Is everyone out?
Hound asked. He could see into the bus well enough, but he was just double-checking.
Yes,
Nora said, and Hound lowered the bus back to the pavement. When he did that, a loud crunch sounded from the building behind them. Everyone turned to look as the building that had sustained the most damage began falling. Immediately, 6 other people hopped on Red Alert's seating platform.
Hang on,
Red Alert said, and sped off to safety. Hound transformed into a military Humvee with extra space in the back for more people to sit.
Get in!
He shouted. Nora hopped in the driver's seat, and the rest of the bus passengers piled in. There were more people than seats, but this was an emergency. Loadout had been doing what he could to shore up the building when the main support column gave way. He turned to run, but then he heard something that made his inner John freeze. A scream. High-pitched, terrified, and unmistakably young. He whipped his head around and saw them. 2 children, no older than his 2 youngest kids, standing frozen in the middle of the street. A boy of maybe 6, clutching a stuffed dinosaur. A girl of perhaps 10 holding his hand, both of them staring up at the mountain of concrete and glass that was about to crush them into the pavement. They were too scared to move, too young to understand that running was their only hope. In their terror, they'd simply stopped, like deer caught in headlights. The building's shadow fell over them.
Look out!
Loadout bellowed, his voice carrying over the thunder of the collapse. Time seemed to slow to a crawl. Loadout could see every detail with crystalline clarity. The boy's wide brown eyes, the girl's pink backpack, the way her blonde hair caught the light from the fires around them. He could calculate the trajectory of the falling building, could predict exactly where 40,000 tons of debris would land, right on top of 2 innocent children. There was no time to pull them to safety. No time for anything except the most desperate gamble of his life. Loadout launched himself forward, his massive frame moving faster than anything that size had a right to move. He hit the ground in a controlled dive, landing hard on his hands and knees, directly over the children just as the building's facade began to break apart above them. The children looked up at him in wonder and terror. The boy still clutched his dinosaur. The girl had tears streaming down her face.
It's okay,
Loadout said, his voice as gentle as he could make it.
I've got you.
Then the world came down on top of them. The first chunks of concrete hit his back like sledgehammers, each impact sending shockwaves through his frame. His armor held, designed to withstand weapons that could level city blocks. But this wasn't weapons fire. This was the weight of an entire building focused on a single point. More debris rained down, faster and heavier. Rebar spears stabbed at his joints. Glass fragments exploded against his armor. The thunder of the collapse was deafening, drowning out everything except the sound of his own internal systems straining under impossible pressure. Everyone, human and Autobot alike, froze, spellbound by the falling of a building.
I hope no one was in there,
Red Alert said over the comm. The 2 passengers Jazz had brought to a safe location had just exited the Porsche, leaving Jazz free to transform into his robot mode. He whipped around and searched the surrounding area quickly.
Load out!
Jazz hollered over the comm.
What's your location?
Warning lights flashed across Loadout's HUD. Structural integrity alarms screamed in his auditory processors. His backplating began to crack under the tremendous weight, energon bleeding from the fractures like luminous blood. But he held. Beneath him, in the small pocket of safety created by his body, 2 children huddled together in the darkness. The girl was crying softly. The boy was whispering something about wanting his mommy.
You're safe,
Loadout told them, though his voice was strained now, distorted by damage to his vocal processors.
I promise you're safe.
Above them, the avalanche continued. More concrete, more steel, more glass. The weight was incredible, beyond anything in his specifications. Systems were failing. His left shoulder joint locked up completely. His right leg actuator sparked and went offline. But still, he held, because underneath him were 2 children who reminded him of his own kids, who deserved to go home to their parents, who deserved to grow up and have normal human lives free from robot wars and impossible choices. Finally, after what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds, the rumbling stopped. The cascade of debris slowed to a trickle, then stopped altogether. In the sudden silence, Loadout could hear sirens getting closer, could hear Jazz calling his name over the comm.
Loadout! Loadout, respond!
Jazz was still hollering.
I'm here.
He managed, his voice an electronic whisper.
I'm here. The children are safe.
Children?
Jazz asked, his voice tight with concern.
2 kids.
Loadout said.
They're okay, but these kids need immediate evac.
Load out,
Jazz said.
What's your location?
Directly underneath that building.
Loadout said.
Decepticons, attack!
Shouted a voice, almost before the noise of the crashing building had dissipated. The real battle was about to begin.